Michael Harrison settled into seat 12F with a quiet sigh, helping his 7-year-old son Tyler buckle his seatbelt for their flight to Colorado. At 41, Michael had learned to keep his head down and avoid drawing attention. The olive green jacket he wore was comfortable and practical. Nothing that would suggest his past or the distinguished flying cross tucked away in a box at home. Tyler pressed his face to the window, marveling at the ground crew loading luggage below. "Dad, do you think we'll see any fighter jets today?" Michael smiled, ruffling his son's sandy brown hair. "Maybe, buddy. You never know what you might see from up here." Across the aisle, Captain Rachel Morrison was reviewing flight schedules on her tablet, her blonde hair pulled back in a professional bun. At 38, she commanded respect as one of the few female F-22 Raptor pilots in the Air Force, currently traveling to Nellis Air Force Base for advanced tactical training. Her crisp uniform and confident bearing marked her as military, though she was traveling in civilian clothes for this commercial flight. As the plane pushed back from the gate, Tyler's excited chatter about airplanes caught Rachel's attention. She glanced over with a polite smile, noting the boy's genuine enthusiasm for aviation. "That's a really cool model airplane," she said, nodding toward the small F-16 toy Tyler was holding. Tyler beamed. "My dad got it for me. He knows all about airplanes, don't you, Dad?" Michael felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Just a little, son." Rachel studied Michael more carefully, recognizing something familiar in his reserved demeanor. "Are you in aviation?" she asked politely. "Used to be," Michael replied simply, hoping to deflect further questions. But Tyler, oblivious to his father's discomfort, piped up proudly. "My dad was the best pilot ever. He flew in the war and everything. Tell her about your call sign, Dad." Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tyler, that's ancient history." Rachel's interest was genuinely piqued now. As a pilot herself, she understood the weight that call signs carried, the stories they told, and the respect they commanded. "What branch?" she asked gently. "Air Force," Michael admitted reluctantly. The flight attendant began the safety demonstration, but Rachel found herself studying the quiet man across the aisle. There was something about his bearing, the way he unconsciously scanned the aircraft, that spoke of serious training and experience. An hour into the flight, turbulence began to shake the aircraft. Tyler gripped his armrest nervously while other passengers murmured with concern. Michael remained perfectly calm, his trained eye assessing the situation automatically. "Dad, is the plane okay?" Tyler whispered. "Just some bumpy air, buddy. The pilots know what they're doing." Rachel noticed Michael's composed response and found herself leaning slightly forward. "You seem pretty comfortable with turbulence." Michael shrugged. "After flying combat missions, commercial turbulence doesn't register much." "Combat missions?" Rachel's voice carried new respect. "What did you fly?" Michael hesitated, glancing at Tyler, who was listening intently. F-15E Strike Eagles. Desert Storm, then later in Afghanistan. Rachel's eyes widened slightly. Strike Eagle pilots were elite, especially those who'd flown in multiple theaters. "That's impressive. How many missions?" 112 combat sorties, Michael said quietly, the number rolling off his tongue automatically. Rachel felt a chill of recognition. Very few pilots reached that number of combat missions. This wasn't just any former pilot sitting across from her. "What was your call sign?" she asked, her voice softer now. Michael looked uncomfortable, but Tyler answered before he could deflect. "Ghost, tell her why they called you that, Dad." Michael closed his eyes briefly. "Tyler," but Rachel had gone very still. "Ghost," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael Ghost Harrison?" Michael looked at her sharply, surprised by the recognition in her voice. Rachel's composure cracked slightly. "Sir, I studied your missions at the academy. The precision strike on the weapons depot in Kandahar. The rescue mission where you flew through a sandstorm to extract that downed helicopter crew. You're legendary." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "That was a long time ago." "You saved 17 lives that day," Rachel continued, her voice filled with genuine awe. "The instructors still use your tactics in advanced combat training." Tyler looked between them, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere. "What's happening? Why is the lady looking at my dad like that?" Rachel turned to Tyler, her expression warm but serious. Your father is a hero, Tyler, a real American hero. Michael held up a hand. Please, I'm just a dad now. That life is behind me. But Rachel was already reaching for her phone. Captain Morrison, F-22 Squadron, she said, extending her hand formally. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Michael shook her hand reluctantly. Just Michael, please. Rachel scrolled through her contacts and placed a call. Colonel Peters? It's Captain Morrison. Sir, you're not going to believe who I'm sitting across from on a commercial flight. Michael tried to interrupt, but Rachel continued. Ghost Harrison. Yes, sir, that Ghost Harrison. We're about 40 minutes out from Denver. She listened for a moment, then looked at Michael with something approaching reverence. Sir, my commanding officer would like to speak with you. Michael reluctantly took the phone. Colonel Peters? Yes, sir. This is Michael Harrison. The conversation that followed was brief, but Tyler watched his father's posture straighten slightly, old habits reasserting themselves as he responded to superior officer with crisp, professional answers. When Michael handed the phone back, Rachel was smiling. Colonel Peters wants to arrange a proper welcome when we land. Nothing official, just some of the pilots who've studied your missions wanting to pay their respects. That's really not necessary, Michael protested. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, what's happening? Are you famous? Michael knelt down to Tyler's eye level. Not famous, son. I just did my job a long time ago, and apparently some people remember. Rachel overheard and gently corrected him. With respect, sir, what you did was far beyond just doing your job. You set the standard that pilots like me try to live up to every day. As they began their descent into Denver, Rachel made one more call. When they landed, instead of the usual deplaning routine, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special passenger on board today. Retired Major Michael Ghost Harrison, Distinguished Flying Cross recipient and one of the most decorated combat pilots in Air Force history. Sir, would you and your son please remain seated for just a moment? Michael's face flushed red. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. But Tyler was practically bouncing with excitement. Dad, everyone knows you're awesome. As the other passengers deplaned, many pausing to shake Michael's hand or thank him for his service, a small group of Air Force personnel appeared at the aircraft door. 3 young F-22 pilots, led by an older colonel, walked down the aisle. When they reached row 12, all 3 pilots snapped to attention and saluted. Major Harrison, the colonel said formally, on behalf of the United States Air Force and every pilot who's benefited from your example, thank you for your service. Michael stood slowly, his old training taking over as he returned the salute with practiced precision. Tyler watched wide-eyed as his quiet, reserved father transformed into the confident military officer he had once been. Colonel, Michael replied, his voice carrying new authority. The honor is mine. One of the young pilots stepped forward. Sir, I flew your Kandahar mission profile in simulator training. I've always wondered, how did you maintain visual contact in that sandstorm? Michael glanced at Tyler, then at Rachel, who was watching with deep respect. For the first time in years, he began to speak about that day, his voice growing stronger as he shared the experience with fellow pilots who understood the weight of those decisions. As they finally left the aircraft, Tyler walking proudly beside his father while the Air Force personnel escorted them through the terminal, the boy looked up with new understanding. Dad, you really are a hero, aren't you? Michael put his arm around his son's shoulders. I'm your dad first, Tyler, but yes, I serve my country and I'm proud of that service. Rachel appeared beside them as they reached the terminal. Sir, I hope you'll consider speaking to some of our younger pilots. Your experience, your perspective, it matters. Michael looked at Tyler, who was beaming with pride, then at the pilots who had gathered to honor him. For the first time since leaving the military, he felt the stirring of purpose beyond just being a father. You know what, Captain Morrison? Maybe it's time I stopped hiding from who I was and started sharing what I learned. Tyler squeezed his father's hand. Does this mean we get to visit Air Force bases? Michael laughed, the sound carrying more joy than it had in years. Yeah, buddy, I think it does. As they walked through the terminal, Michael Harrison realized that sometimes the most important journey isn't the flight you're on, but the recognition that your past doesn't have to be buried. It can be a bridge to a meaningful future.